The judges, we've gotten used to this. Unconstitutional, unconstitutional. Wait a minute. They don't have the right. It is unconstitutional for them to say that. We need to recognize that. We can win the culture war. We can turn this all around if we do three things. Okay? First is, you and I, we got to start educating ourselves. It's like being in the plane. I mentioned this a month ago. I was talking about put your own mask on first, right? You're in the plane, you know, if the oxygen masks are deployed, put your mask on first. But then help the liberals who are sitting beside you, right? Yes, they're not getting any oxygen. That's what's happening there. Okay, so, you're ready. Hope none of my old friends from Berkeley see this. You guys good on there? Yeah. So, okay, so we've got to get our own. We got to get our own news. We got to get informed. And I'm going to talk about some stories you're not hearing, but that will affect the future of this republic. Okay, and just a few of them as examples of things that we're not hearing. Okay, there's a children's game. Okay, so first thing is get our news. Next thing is we got to stop letting our children be deceived. Did you read that story about the kid who has seen Al Gore's film An Inconvenient Truth in 4 classes? 4 different classes: economics, world history, something else. He's got to see it over and over. And it's untrue. There's a very good video called The Great Global Warming Swindle. The Great Global Warming Swindle. Very good video. One of the guys who's on it is one of the co-founders of Greenpeace. Okay, and he's very much for the environment, but he's also for honesty. And these guys have made an industry that now you got these reporters. What are they called? Ecological reporters, or I can't remember the name of it. But it's like you got to have news in your area, and so they'll, you make it. You hear something. Oh, if we don't do this in 5 years, we're all gonna, all the ice in our freezers is gonna melt, or something like this. It's gonna be something terrible. Okay, so there's a children's game called Simon Says. Okay, Simon Says. Raise your right hand. Okay, go ahead and put your right hand down. Ooh, Margie knows too much. That's right, that's right. Simon Says, put your hand back down, right? Okay. In a way, unconstitutional has become a magic word for the judges. The judge says, for example, I'm going to use a hypothetical thing, and I mentioned this last time. That is, all children should be put on leashes, all dogs should run free. And to not do that is unconstitutional. And we as a people, I know that's outrageous, but so are some of their decisions. Because if you're like, oh, darn, the judge said unconstitutional. If only they hadn't said that, darn. But they said unconstitutional. No, they don't have the right to do that. It is unconstitutional to do that. Judicial review is unconstitutional. What is constitutional is citizen review. We decide we don't like, you can get the camera ready to move. We decide we don't like who our congressman is. So we put somebody else in there. I'm just hypothetically speaking. Okay, hypothetically speaking. I'm sorry, right? Every 2 years, we re-elect the members of the House of Representatives every 6 years for the Senate, right? And every 4 years for the President, Vice President, right? Marbury versus Madison, 1803, that's the law suit, or the case that they say, oh, well, this gives us judicial review. No, it doesn't. It's not an amendment to the Constitution. In order to supersede, to change what the Constitution says, you've got to amend it. So, judicial review based on this case is unconstitutional. Oh, boy, aren't you glad we got this multimedia presentation here? Okay, if you had an alarm clock, let's say you need to wake up in the morning, or let's say it's a smoke alarm, right? And let's say the alarm clock light's going off at, say, 2:30 in the morning. And then it doesn't go off at 6 when you got to get up, or whenever you got to get up. How long would you keep that alarm clock? How soon before you throw it in the toilet and start flushing until it gets quiet, right? Don't keep an alarm clock, or whatever it is, smoke alarm, fire alarm, or alarm clock to wake you up. Don't keep it. The news media is alerting us to things that aren't important, or that are stupid, or that are part of the left-wing agenda, and they are not alerting us to things that are important, okay? So, this is a very interesting book. I found out since then, this woman is very well known, but I got this at a library sale. Never forget Kay Coles James. She was involved, this is about 12 years ago or so, in the first Bush administration in the Right to Life movement. And it's very interesting, her autobiography, growing up in very low-budget housing, and then later getting involved in politics and becoming part of the pro-life movement. And on page 162, she's talking about, the left-wing media likes to censor. Some people don't know that. Now, I know that very well because I've been a victim of it, but many people haven't, or they're like, oh, it's not that bad. Yes, it is bad. It is really bad. Okay, let's see. This is from page 162, her book, Never Forget. The riveting story of one woman's journey from public housing to the corridors of power. Let's see, my most constant source of frustration while working for National Right to Life was the blatant and subtle manipulation by the media of any news related to abortion. Even the talk shows like Donahue and Oprah were at the bidding of the pro-abortion leadership. Once I was invited to represent the National Right to Life on the Donahue show, but Faye Wattleton told them that she wouldn't come if I were on the show, so they uninvited me. Faye Wattleton got to pick who her opponents were. They even refused to allow me to be in the audience. I mentioned I've been censored before. Maybe I'll bring it up here in a couple minutes. There was an atheism debate going on ABC News, if you heard about that. It's been going on for a couple months. And so I put up a post which I thought was interesting. I'll just mention it briefly, okay? Because I sometimes speak on college campuses, and I like to really rattle their cages, and I have fun with them. I dangle some raw meat in front of them, and then here's one of the things I like to say to them, just as a side note here. Have any of you ever heard that religious wars are some of the worst wars in history? And they'll jump on that because of what they're being taught. They're being taught, oh, religion is bad, and we need to stand against that kind of, those backwards thinking people, stuff like that. So they've all heard of it. So like I said, I'm just kind of dangling raw meat in front of them. And then I'll say, excuse me, but when were the worst religious wars? Does anyone know when the worst religious wars were? And they're all kind of like, thinking, wasn't it the 20th century religious wars when the atheists came to power? Because they not only killed foreign armies, but they mass murdered their own people by the tens of millions. In Russia, in China, in Cambodia, in Ethiopia, right? And of course, this is something that does not compute. They've never heard this before, and they don't know what to do with it, right? Because it's like, no, atheism is good. No, it is not, because it means there's no rules at all. If you're answering to some kind of a God, some kind of a deity, even if it's not the right one, the correct one, if you're answering some kind of God, there are some kind of rules. Atheism, though, is like, no, we make the rules. And if I silence the opposition, then I've won. That's a good thing. There are no absolutes. Okay, I won't go into that too much. But anyway, my message done on ABC News, just a brief thing about that, they cut it out. But there were actually about 100 responses that I could see in anger against it. So I could see the results that my message had been read. It's just that, oh no, that can't be heard. And so my message was kicked out. Okay, this is from a couple of years ago in this particular article that I thought was very interesting, because I'm talking about the schools. I'm going to jump back and forth a little bit, and I'm going to try and speak quickly because I know I don't have too much time. Let's see, what date was this? December 9th, 2003. Teen expelled for Advil at school. Amanda Stiles, a sophomore at Parkway High in Shreveport, Louisiana, never gave a second thought to carrying Advil in her purse for her frequent headaches. At least she didn't until a few days ago when she was expelled for school for 1 year, when the Advil was discovered in her purse by a teacher. What's the teacher doing looking in her purse? Why is she expelled from school for having headache medicine? The insanity. The monolithic, monopolistic schools, you have no choice then, right? When they go insane, they make the rules. What's the worst kind of monopoly? A company that's a monopoly or a government monopoly? If it's a government monopoly, who do you complain to? We have to break up the schools, folks, if we love our children. Okay? Let me move on here. Have any of you, I know you haven't, but I have,